Appreciate you all coming. I hope you all received Heather Butler's reminder that the annual reports are due, and please get those in. And I think even included with the reports is ideally a photograph of the committees. They like to publish as well. Why don't we start, as we often do, with you.
Okay.
Good morning.
Wayne.
Yeah, thank you.
Peter Hunter, Chair of the Recreation Commission. Number of activities continuing to go on, and new activities with the Recreation Department. Everybody should have received the now somewhat abbreviated guide. Probably saved about 75% of the cost by reducing the number of pages and referring people to the website, which continues to improve. But it's packed with information about all the different programs that we have at the Recreation Commission. Pretty amazing stuff. In terms of activities, this month, on March 9th, the annual Shamrock Ball. That's always sold out. It's for girls and their dads from grades 2 to 6. That's a lot of fun, and that's on March 9th. The annual Easter egg hunt, which is also very popular, will be on Good Friday, April 19th at CCHS in the Beatty Center. Also, we are in the final rounds of interviews for a tourism manager at the Visitor Center. It's a pretty important position. We're excited. We have good candidates. The Recreation Department took over the Visitor Center about a year ago, and they've set fairly lofty goals to try to improve information and just enhance tourism in the town. And hiring a good, strong tourism manager is a good start. Also, recently, as everybody probably aware, town purchased White Pond, and the Recreation Commission is designated to manage that property and that activity. And February 26th, I believe, is the opening for existing members of White Pond to register for this coming year's season. And then March 1st, it will be open to all town citizens. So the existing members can get a priority as agreed to
When does that open, Peter?
26th of February. Other than that, we're continuing to work to improve the Beatty Center and increase that membership. It's going pretty well. Andy Sutton, who is a relatively new manager, is doing a great job. I'm very pleased with the progress.
And the White Pond, the priority goes to current members, whether or not they're residents of Concord at this point.
Correct. I believe they all are residents of Concord. In fact, in that area near White Pond, there's a certain. I think there was kind of a restriction on who could be members.
I think initially, my understanding was initially that's correct, but then if people move, they could still remain members. So that there were, and I don't think they called them members, there were some people, but there were a number of people who remained associated with it, and they'll, at least for the first 3 years, my understanding is that they will be able to continue.
Right.
And I think the fees are less than they have now.
Yes, they are. Well, so we're hopefully encouraging folks to join and use a great resource in the town. So.
Terrific, thank you. Anybody have any questions on that? We'll move right along.
Nick Pappas, Climate Action Advisory Board. We're beginning to work on the climate action plan for Concord. We're scheduled at the next meeting to review what other communities are doing about green building policies. And there was also, in the long-range plan, there was in the transportation section, there was a indication of the importance for dealing with transportation for purposes of climate. And so we'll be reviewing that from the plan too. And I've been reviewing the Senator Barrett's carbon tax proposal that's on the Senate docket, and do have some questions and concerns about it once I started digging into the details. It's clear on how the money's going to come in. Not so clear to me how it's going to be spent. There are issues like they talk about setting aside money for administration, but each year the amount of the tax goes up by $5 a metric ton equivalent, but there's no cap on the administration, and it's not clear that you need a lot more people to handle more money. So I have questions about that, but also one good part of the bill is a provision that as the tax comes in, to offset the hardship that might create on some groups by giving some rebate to them on taxes. But again, that's vague. And there's also a provision for giving money to disadvantaged industries that were unfairly hurt. But then again, if it's a carbon tax, it's supposed to hurt, but there's no indication of what the criteria are for that. So being a longtime Massachusetts resident and being born here, I'm a little concerned about how the legislature spends our money. So I'd like to look into that a bit
I would
more.
say definitely give their office a call, because I think they're very responsive.
I have, they haven't responded. But I'll be on them.
We'll do what we can to keep them on the,
Yeah.
make sure they answer.
It's a good thing. It's become clear to us in the Climate Action Advisory Board that we really want to provide, the state should be providing incentives for people to do things that reduce carbon emissions. But it seems to me that most of the money we're taking in on the tax should be given towards those incentives to create the right, but that doesn't seem to be the flavor of the bill. So that's what my concern is.
I'm sure that the nature of politics is have to be some probably compromises along the way, but thank you. Any questions on that?
Yes, I do have a question or comment that is that the planning board recently passed site plan review criteria for sustainability and resiliency. And the problem that we've had as developers have brought forth proposals is that we don't have any explicit standards. And, you know, if you're looking at green building, for example, you know, and I'd ask you kind of our sustainability director or somebody, we need technical assistance with how to define you know, a set of reasonable and yet enforceable criteria when these, you know, development proposals come forward, because often it is the most effective time to establish this, rather than retrofitting an old building, is to build the new one right.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Great. Yes, thank you.
Greg Higgins, Natural Resources. I'm pleased to some extent to say that there's our agenda and everything has really been sparse the last several months, and it's odd, and we're sort of waiting for, looking over our shoulders to find out what is going on. I mean, we have two, I think, things to take up this evening.
Wish for.
Exactly. I'm not wishing. That's my point. I'm being cautious here. So, but one thing I would like to mention to everyone, and please think about it, is that we will have two openings this spring, and we've had one fellow stay on for an extra year, which is wonderful because he's really good. But we will need some influx of new blood, so it would be nice to think about that, noodle that around, and see if anybody has a friend or
It's actually a good reminder that all of you, when you'll be probably having some members term limit off, as it were, be sure to let us know, get a hold of Andrew in the town manager's office, because we need to try to generate the green cards, but we also need to fill those slots. And that oftentimes is kind of slows down the process in the spring to get things done.
Is there any way we can publicize, get that word out as to where the openings might be, or
I think we can do that on the website. I would
yeah,
think.
something like that,
Yeah.
because
And then perhaps even the Concord Journal, but certainly it seems like the website is.
yeah, I don't know if the journal really produced it.
Yeah,
Wouldn't hurt.
yeah. Mark.
Hi, Mav Pardee from the Library Committee. One of the highlights in the last month was that Stephanie Rivera from the Fowler Branch was on the Newbery Award Committee, which is incredible honor for our little town. And they select very high value children's books. So that was great. And she's going to come to the Library Committee next month and tell us all about it because we're very interested. In terms of kind of more ordinary things, we're planning for the transition of the longtime curator in summer 2019. She's been running the special collections and helping with the town archives for 23 years. So this is a big transition that we're planning for. The library's has just started collaborating with Minuteman Arc on something called the Next Chapter Book Club, where we're assembling a collection of large print, high interest, suitable readability levels to share with Minuteman Arc, and that started off really strongly and with a lot of interest. Library Legislative Day is on March 5th, and Carrie Cronin, the director, and a couple of library committee members will be going into the State House to advocate on behalf of funding for libraries. We've had the initial contact and planning with a consultant because it's time for the library committee to do another long-range plan. We'll anticipate starting that process early in the summer, probably in June. And then there are a couple of public forums coming up related to the Connecting Our Community campaign, which is going to be the big capital campaign for the expansion of the library to 151 Main Street. So one of those forums will be on March 6th at 7 p.m. The other one will be on March 20th at 10 in the morning. They're both going to take place at the library, and at those forums we'll be able to show people the plans, talk about new programming, and get information from people on things they'd like to see us doing as the library expands. Other significant things are at town meeting. There will be a review of a CPA request for capital as part of that Connecting Our Community campaign of $500,000, which is incredibly generous of that committee to have recommended our full request. And then in the town capital budget, there's an additional $500,000 for FF&E, furnishings, fittings, and equipment, FF&E. And then we will be launching, it's really the trustees who will be launching the capital fundraising campaign, which has a goal of about $10 million, of which they have already raised over $5 million, somewhere between $5 and $5.5 million. So a lot going on, but things are going well.
Some of the town funding of that 500,000 are for light fixtures and other things, which the idea being that the operating cost, which the town is responsible for, will be reduced as a result of that investment.
Right, higher efficiency.
When that structure is completed, what is the library committee's anticipation of the staffing requirements for it?
We're still looking at that. It's an additional amount of space of about 40% over what we have right now. We're thinking it's someplace like 1.5 full-time equivalent, because librarians don't sort of stand at the desk anymore. It's turned into a field in which the librarians circulate, they plan programs and so on. So while it sounds like we're going to need a lot of people, I think that at this point the committee is talking with Carrie about 1.5 full-time equivalents.
Okay, I guess we're ready to move on.
My name
If
is-
you could make sure the microphone, thanks.
Yep. My name is Sarah Grimwood. I chair the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee, which has been going just over a year. I'm relatively new to Concord. This is my 7th year. I know some of you I've met at various places. I look forward to getting to know you better. So the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee has spent the last year really trying to understand the complications around this area, the politics, the legal situation, and really discussing and debating how we can make a difference, how we can educate the Concord community, and such like. And we have quite a lot of ideas. It's a little overwhelming actually, but what we're going to do, the first real thing you'll see is at town meeting we're going to have a flyer which will, or a few flyers maybe, but sort of outlining the problem and how how Concord residents can make a difference in, challenging their landscapers on what they're spraying, for example, on what they might plant to help pollinators, and really just raising awareness about the issue. And then we're, step by step, gently, hopefully you'll see a lot more action from us in the next year. We've just been renewed until May 2020, so that's great.
So any handout at town meeting
Yes.
needs to be submitted to the moderator in advance.
Yes, I understand that. Thank you. Is there a timeline for when that has to be submitted by?
We don't have a deadline, but you'll
Sooner
tell
better.
me if it comes in the week before town meeting,
Right,
so
okay.
sometime before that. Thank you.
Terry.
Hi, I'm Terry Ackerman, I'm Chair of the Community Preservation Committee. And this year, Article 22, we have several projects that we're recommending to town meeting totaling 1.8 million. 400,000 of that comes from prior year fund balances and 1.4 million from this year's allotment to CPC. And the projects include Junction Village for 300,000. This is the third of the last year of that, hopefully, that we are contributing to this project. The library, as Matt stated, 500,000. The Timothy Wheeler House, 20,800. Giroux improvements at Giroux Land, 200,000. White Pond beach improvements, 250,000. Warner's Pond dredging, the initial seed money, 75,000 to get the permitting started. Emerson land acquisition, we have a variety of sources of funding for this. CPC will contribute 90,000 of that. Haywood Meadows stone wall extension, 21,619. Old Calf pasture, 5,000. And Emerson Field improvements, 300,000. So come to town meeting and vote for these projects.
The Old Town Pasture, we announced last night, there was a $10,000 gift from the Sony Pictures. As a result, they were appreciative of when they were filming Little Women. So that's to take care of invasive species, and so we'll be able to push that ahead a little bit quicker. So
Correct.
that was good news. And
Right, so CPC partway through our funding, we found, partway through our process, we found out about that, and we only need to put in the other 5,000, so that's great.
Anticipating for next year, this year there was about a 18 to 20% state match.
Right.
Is that expected? And we just don't, you never know.
You
year by
never
year.
know, finance director likes to be very conservative and put something like 10 or 11% in the projections, and then if we get a nice surprise like we did this year, great. It used to be 100% and it's gradually going down. Boston and some other large cities have joined in, so we're relatively pessimistic. On the other hand, the legislature is looking at maybe figuring out how to put more money into the pot, so right now our projection is only 10 or 11%, and hopefully that'll go up.
Matt Johnson, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, standing in for Gary Kleiman, who couldn't be here today. It's pretty easy to report on what we've been up to because we've had various cancellations due to weather and also conflicts with town hearings and so on. Really the only thing to report since last month is that Gary has arranged for us to get briefings from various experts in the areas of smart growth and affordable housing production. Because, if you look at the comprehensive long-range plan, these are sort of critical issues for the community. And so we started with a presentation from Civic Moxie explaining their, I think, very excellent smart growth analysis that's a chapter of the comprehensive long-range plan. Highly recommend that to folks. And then we were to have a presentation from the Mass Housing Choice Program Director, again about affordable housing production. So this is very much a focus for us. It will be in the coming year. You should be expecting to see in next year's town meeting some zoning-oriented proposals, hopefully on the back of work that's going on in affordable housing funding.
And you're having a public hearing on the warrant articles in March.
Oh, on March 5th. Sorry, thanks for that prompt. At 7 p.m. March 5th. So all the planning board warrant articles will be discussed, and certainly hope to get people to attend and ask their questions so that we can be prepared for town meeting.
Matt gave a presentation last night. There's some controversy regarding the
Formula business bylaw
Yes.
amendment, because we already have one on the books for West Concord, and the proposals to extend that to Concord Center.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Yannis
If
Tsitsis.
you could grab a mic, maybe that mic there. Yeah.
Hi, good morning. My name is Yannis Tsitsas. I'm a board member. I'm a member of the board of Concord Housing Development Corporation. So I'm here to update you as far as our stuff. We are pursuing the acquisition of a single-family home on Main Street in West Concord to develop for affordable housing purpose with the financial assistance of Community Preservation Act funds, the Concord Housing Foundation, and Habitat for Humanity. We are too early to go more into details, but that's what we're doing. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. I've been a Concord resident since 2005. I live in West Concord, and I've been a board member since about a year ago.
Great. And the Habitat for Humanity coordination, is that a new affiliation working with them, or has that been done in the past?
Well, for us, it's a new affiliation. Habitat has been doing that for
Yeah.
a long time. We try to figure out a system or a solution of how to make affordable housing. And as you know, you gotta buy an existing house and then you gotta put some money into there or fix it up or bring it up to whatever. We're not in the business of managing properties or developing properties, so we just wanna make sure, work with somebody who's very familiar to that.
Terrific.
And minimize the expenses and have a product that is very appealing.
I think it's a great idea. Anybody have any questions on that? Ray, maybe we'll go to you, and then we can, do using it too. What?
Are we skipping me on purpose?
I don't have you last,
Oh, okay.
because you're, you can memorize, and I have comments on that.
Good morning, Ray Considine, Board of Health. In addition to what seems like our ongoing discussion around youth vaping in Concord, and I think we're going to be hopefully proposing some actions on that later on in the year, we tackled a number of issues at our meeting over the past couple months at our meetings. I think, Tom, as you know, the state just adopted the new federal food code, and thus Concord is held to that food code. So we conducted trainings for food establishments here in town, and I think there are 60 new items on the food code, which is practically double what the old food code was. That old food code was passed in 1999. The federal government finally got around to updating it in 2013. So now it's flowing down because it goes to the State Department of Public Health, and then all municipalities have to adhere to that as their food codes. So because it's more expansive, staff developed mandatory food training seminars for all food service establishments in Concord and Lincoln. You may not know, but we provide public health services to the town of Lincoln under a contract, and we provided trainings for them. And 145 staff from 96 different food establishments participated in this mandatory, free but mandatory training, and both in Concord and Lincoln, with of course the bulk of those establishments being in Concord. And you may not know, but we have 140 food permits for establishments in Concord alone. I was pretty surprised when we got that report ourselves. I didn't know it was that extensive. We expanded the existing contract with Emerson Hospital Home Care to bring on or add the hours of a public health nurse. We currently have some hours of that nurse, and most of that is focused on communicable disease reporting and some degree of flu shots. But we've expanded those hours and with the hope that we can spend more time on focusing on substance abuse prevention presentations. She also works under contract with Lincoln and Carlisle, so there is some hope that we can use her time with all three communities in crafting this approach to substance abuse prevention programming, which we don't really have a capacity right now with staff. This expands that capacity. And then finally, we we approved funding in the amount of $4,000 from the department's Healthy Concord initiative. It's a line item in the department's budget. $4,000 for the Center for Parents and Teachers so that they can undertake some community presentations. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey that came out last year really highlighted a number of issues on youth mental health, on cyberbullying and cyber use in general. And this would be focused on those issues that were presented in what's called the YRBS. So,
And is that done in conjunction with Emerson Hospital, that survey?
oh, Emerson Hospital pays for it.
Hey, yeah.
So they are a terrific partner in that regard. So they have for, I can't quite remember how far back it goes, but they've been conducting and paying for that survey. And it's done every other year, and it surveys, I believe it begins at 6th grade to 12th on a whole host of different issues, grade specific.
Yeah.
And it's very reliable. It's something that goes on nationally, so and it's been tested, so it's very reliable data for public health programs.
Have we had much of an outbreak of flu in the town, do you know?
I can't really comment on. I know that there have been 3 deaths, pediatric deaths, this year in the state, which is up. And certainly 3, on one hand, isn't a large number, but certainly for those families, it's devastating. I don't know if it's been as bad as previous years in terms of the general population.
And do we also have a sense in the town of sort of people not being vaccinated, or I know that's a national issue as well.
That I'm not aware of. I don't know if that we've had the same situation. I think what you're referring to is some states like Washington where there's been a real pushback on vaccinating children.
And outbreaks of measles and mumps. And
Right. So
other diseases we thought were something of the past.
right. I mean, there's concerns about the safety of vaccines. I don't think science has indicated that that's a case, but some parents are really concerned. I know there's some concern that there's a link with autism with vaccines, but there really hasn't been any evidence that suggests that. But yet it's a growing concern. Okay.
On the food code, 1 or 2 most significant changes?
Perhaps if we get a mic in here, I'm sorry.
Sorry, on the food code, 1 or 2 most significant changes?
Well, there's a checklist that the inspectors go into the restaurants with, and I will take a guess that it's around 30 or 40 items, and it's now been increased to 60 items. So it's things like how long is food out of either a heating environment or a cooling environment. So you can only leave food out for so long before it becomes a problem. And are you using the right kind of chemicals in terms of wiping down surfaces and utensils, and is that done regularly? And so I don't know the specifics in terms of what those additional 30 items entail, but it's far more detailed than, pardon me, detailed than the 99 code.
And will that affect farm stands, you know?
Well, only if it's food preparation. So so some of the 140 food establishments, some of those are not subject to the food code restrictions, extension of the food code, because they really don't prepare on site. So we license them, but some of it's prepackaged, and so there's no prep on site, and there's no refrigeration or heating concerns with it.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Do any of the guidelines before or after the changes affect being able to redistribute food that's not needed to people who might need it.
I'm not aware that the food code covers food donations.
Okay.
I can certainly get back to you on that.
Yeah, just interested. Thank you.
Interesting stuff, thank
It
you.
is. Thank you.
I've always enjoyed the Board of Health, I think they got some of the more interesting issues.
We miss you on the board, Tom.
Well, I enjoyed
But
it.
we're glad you're here, though.
I'm Janet Miller, Chair of the Comprehensive Sustainability and Energy Committee. And we have not met since the last Chair's Breakfast because of the snowstorm last week. So I don't have a lot new to report, but a small subset of us are continuing to work on planning the Sustainable Landscaping Fair that I mentioned last week. And we've sent invitations out to a number of individuals and organizations, and I've got quite a bit of favorable response. Some of them, like the Audubon, Master Audubon is saying, this is great, there's something else on that day, we really have to find some stuff, but we hope to be there. I mean, that kind of response. So it's underway, and just to remind you, this event is going to happen on May the 18th at the Willard School from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And people who come to the fair will be given some addresses of properties that they can go and look at sustainable landscapes. And if anybody knows of a good example, we're still looking for one or two more, please let me know.
Might also, it'd be interesting to see if there are sort of people who are specializing in this and might want to come to, if you will, advertise their services. 'Cause,
Oh yes, we have done that.
Right.
We've got the Eco Quiet lawn care people coming who they responded just like that.
Right.
There's also Parterre Ecological, which specializes in removing invasive species. Can't remember who else.
Good, that's terrific, thank you. Any questions on that? Thank you so much. Susan, do you, okay, we'll move along.
Rick Eifler, Chair of the Concord Housing Authority. We earlier this month hosted a joint meeting of the various housing groups in town to review the warrant articles that relate to affordable housing. So we went through those one by one and got some information out there on those articles. Of particular interest to us is Article 27, I think, which is the Giroux property, which would be given a piece of that property that's closest to Commonwealth Avenue is up for possibility of being given to the Housing Authority to build a house, an affordable house for the town. And we have signed a memorandum of understanding with the town to help fund a feasibility study for that little parcel, so that prior to town meeting we can establish the feasibility of actually building a house on that piece. It's a tricky little piece of property because it has a lot going on in a small space. It's close to the pond, so there are wetland issues. It's close to the access point to the new town land on the Giroux property. It's close to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. It's close to Commonwealth Avenue, and needs to have sewer and water hookups, and it's at the end of a sewer line at that point, so that's a little tricky. So there are a bunch of things that make it
But it does abut property that you already have.
yeah, so we are having a house there already helps with a number of those things. We have water at 365 Commonwealth. I think the address for this little house would probably be 369 Commonwealth, be right next door. So water would be easy. We have sewer at 365 Commonwealth. We're the last one on the line, but we do have a sewer manhole in the front yard that would, if we can combine our two properties and get approval to connect a new little house to the sewer, probably 2 bedrooms, we could connect to the sewer through our sewer manhole rather than trying to go out onto Commonwealth Avenue and connect that way. So we're a good fit for that. We know we can get the water hookup. We think we can get the sewer hookup. The wetlands will be, in this feasibility study, the wetlands would be delineated, and then the setback issues would be more real at that point. They're grading issues. It's a steep little property. It falls off into the pond. So there are a bunch of issues, and we felt it would, they're going to be, it would be good going to town meeting and be able to show what might actually be built there. So I think we're also planning on at least having a schematic design for what might go there, and a cost estimate for what might go there prior to town meeting. The other interesting thing going on with the federal government, we have 18 scattered houses around town, which are HUD-funded affordable houses that we manage. And HUD is, in November, prior to the shutdown, came out with a lofty goal of repositioning, they call it, over 100,000 units nationwide. They want to reposition, which means get rid of or otherwise fund some of their HUD units. And because they are continually underfunding the capital improvements for those houses, their estimates range from 25 to 50 billion dollars of unfunded. So anyway, they and it seems like the strategy is going to be that instead of having them as a housing program that HUD monitors every aspect of, they want to either somehow get them into one of the voucher programs, which are the rental assistance programs. So they would still be funded that way, but that I'm guessing the idea is that that's a more efficient way for the government, at least, to fund housing, is through a rental assistance program rather than directly owning and managing the houses and funding their upkeep. So we'll see how that works for our 18 units over the next few months. Now the government's back in business. Mary Ann, our executive director, is going to go to information sessions on this and try to figure out how we might be involved in that. Do you have a question?
Oh, quick question, Rick. Back to your house on Commonwealth Avenue. Do you anticipate next year that you might be seeking some community preservation
Yes.
funding? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll need funding.
Thank you very much.
Sure, why not? I'm Peter Goldley. I'm chairing the Historic Districts Commission this year. I think just a few things to report. We've had, in terms of expanding and creating new historic districts, there was a move to expand the Main Street Historic District, stalled partly due to a lack of interest among residents. But since then, we've actually had a couple of other neighborhoods about expanding or creating historic districts, so you may hear more about that, not this year at town meeting, but maybe next year. We do have a couple of large non-residential projects that will come before us that have generated already a great amount of interest, one being the library project. Holy Family is expanding the Parish House project. That's going to have a large impact on the neighborhood. We are looking at signage and street furniture guidelines. There have been a number of, I don't know what to call the issues with street furniture in the downtown area here, but complaints maybe is the right word, about consistency or size or what have you. So we're reviewing those guidelines. And then we are looking at energy efficiency and sustainability guidelines for historic structures, which is also something that's a little tricky to navigate, and we may be asking some of you for assistance on developing those guidelines.
You may have cell tower issues coming your way as well.
We have seen some of that. Now the latest is that the Verizon strategy is to split it into 2 towers, I've heard. So I don't know where that stands right now.
There's a proposal out to see what people's interest is in terms of the company. So if Verizon comes back and says that they have a proposal, they'll be probably presenting it to you. Because I think the two locations are the fire and police station and Kais Road. So.
Those meetings are very well attended.
Yes. And I think will continue to be.
All right.
Yes, please.
I have a question about the Scout House. I know that the committee that runs it, which is basically not made up of Concord residents, as far as I can tell, at least the two people I know are not Concord residents. They're planning to put in air conditioning, and I heard that they thought that heat pumps were not going to work, and because, you know, but in order to lower the carbon footprint, and we think that CSAC thinks that heat pumps are much better than straight air conditioning. I just wondered whether you were aware of that.
I'm not even sure if this guy's is in the district. It may not be in one of the overlay districts. But I can.
You just make sure you're speaking into the mic. So.
I'm not sure if that's in the overlay district or not. I don't have it in front of me. But
I think it is.
Is it? Okay.
I believe so.
So we'll certainly, it'll have to come before us.
Okay, good.
For sure.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, I had a question for Peter, which is that I know that the Historic District Commission has a kind of a specific legal charter for managing the sort of look and feel of the streetscape, but and you had talked about kind of middling interest in expanding some of these historic districts or creating new ones. One approach that Lexington has pursued is creating what's called a neighborhood conservation districts, which are a kind of historic district light. They are more managed by the residents themselves. They can have different criteria. I just was curious whether there may be neighborhoods, because this would be something that the planning board would have to bring forward as a bylaw amendment. You know, is there interest among those neighborhoods that perhaps feel that the historic district is too rigid or too formal, that yet they're very preservation oriented? I think of areas like Hubbard Street and, you know, that maybe this is a model that could work, and if so, should it be something that the planning board should look into?
I know we have, Matt, looked at, Heather Gill, our planner, used to be with Wellesley, which also has these districts. And we've talked about it a little bit. Her initial response to us when we brought it up was that those are, because they're unenforceable, it's self-policing, that they're not as effective as a mechanism, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't explore it more. So I'm happy to talk to the group more about it and maybe bring a more formal summary maybe to your...
That'd be very interesting. I mean, again, I haven't followed up with Lexington since they passed this a couple of years ago. And I don't know whether it's successful or not. I just thought it was an interesting model.
Maybe something's better than nothing, so.
It could be.
Right.
On the other hand, it might not be.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Sure.
Next. Musical chairs here.
I'm Emily Wheeler. I'm a member of the Concord Ag Committee, and I'm here in place of Happy Gothert, who's our chair. A few dates to put on your calendars, I hope. Saturday, March 9th, the Seed Lending Library opens, and Ricky Marshall of Marshall Farm will be the speaker. And then, of course, there will all be the seeds for everybody to take away and plant in their
Now
gardens.
where?
Fowler Library, and it's at 2:30 in the afternoon. Then on Thursday, March 21st, the Ag Committee Spring Forum will be at Harvey Wheeler Center at 7, and it's a panel of local chefs who use locally produced vegetables, other farm products in their cooking, and how they do that and why they do that. So that's the 21st. The Ag Day Farmers Market, September 14th, Main Street. And the only other thing that I wanted to note in connection with the roughly 20th anniversary of the purchase of the property where the Thoreau birthplace sits, is just what an extraordinary story that was of acquiring the land, some 19 acres, putting it in conservation for recreational use. As you probably know, it's farmed now by Gaining Ground. So I was really pleased in connection with the publication of a book by Lucille Stott, documenting that whole process, to learn and relearn the story of the partnership that lay behind that, and the fact that farmland that had been farmed since colonial times, with the help of the town and so many other partners, was preserved and is being farmed to great good use. So just ongoing appreciation for our agricultural legacy and the town's support for it.
I would just say that I know the NRC is looking for new members, and we've been trying to get somebody from the agricultural community to be on the NRC. So if you can put the word out, we'd love to get somebody to be on it. So.
Well, the Ag Committee, like so many other committees, is also facing the issue of needing new members soon. We're a 5-member committee. 2 of the members are Friends of Agriculture, and I fill one of those slots. And I'll be going off in about a year, so we need some Friends of Agriculture on the Agricultural Committee.
Great, thank you. Bob, are you next, I guess?
Can we come together?
Okay, combo.
2 for 1.
Very efficient. Yeah, announce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Joanna Boynton, Chair of the Concord School Committee. We're here together. You want to announce yourself?
Robert Grom, Chair of the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee.
So the Concord School Committee is spending considerable time right now on their warrant articles, which include asking the town for funds to support a feasibility study and schematic designs for a new middle school. It's quite a large endeavor. We have a schedule on our website of many information sessions and opportunities to come for a tour of the middle schools every Saturday in March. 9:30 at Sanborn and 11 at Peabody. We'll be hosting tours for people, trying to get the word out, and obviously the word out on understanding the scope and the magnitude of the. So it's really taken up most of our time. I was here last night presenting.
Less than 12 hours ago.
So if anyone has any questions on that, that's mostly what we're spending our time on.
Is it the intention of building one school?
The intention is of building one school.
So it's an interesting, it's a high price, unfortunately, and so I think it's very important that we get the word out, and that I would urge everybody to try to get over to see the building, because I think that's, the question is, how quickly does it have to be done? Can you actually save money by doing it quicker, because you're not putting money into something that you're patching, but may break down anyway and be of substantial cost. So, Bob, did you have?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments.
May I just before we move on, I think the decision will be made after the Finance Committee hearing on the school articles, but I think there's a pretty high likelihood that we'll specially schedule the article for the middle school. It's a $90 million project, and there's likely to be really substantial interest in it.
Mm-hmm.
Given the fact that Tuesday night we're having an electronic voting demonstration, I think that Wednesday night is probably the most likely spot for the special scheduling. But again, that decision will get made after the hearing, and I've got full information. I was I had benefited from your presentation last night, which was really helpful, but we'll wait until after the hearings, and of course I'll consult with the select board on that before we make the decision in the school.
Great, but thank you, Carmen. That reminds me also that the public hearing is on Monday, February 25th, for all the school articles, and we welcome and appreciate feedback and questions.
And the regional school committee's 2 articles will also be discussed this coming Monday night at 7 o'clock. Our budget at the regional high school came in aligned with the finance committee guidelines, so that shouldn't engender too much discussion, but certainly our Article 16, which is the capital projects article, may do so. A couple of parts of that article are very straightforward, paving and lighting, more or less safety issues and so forth. The other part of the article is an expansion of the parking facility at the high school, which may engender a little bit more discussion. And I just wanted to give a little bit of background. You know, we created the Campus Advisory Committee back in October of 17. We had 12 meetings, 2 public forums. That committee sort of morphed into the Campus Oversight Subcommittee of the school committee, and we had 7 meetings, not all about parking, but certainly that was a major point of discussion. Especially the campus committee had 15 members, 3 or 4 from the community, 3 from the school administration, the principal, superintendent, a couple of school committee members. I was one of them. And so we've done a lot of discussion and research about this, and we are clearly convinced that there is a lack of parking availability at the high school. So we feel very strongly that we need to improve that. It's a stress situation, not just for students, but for teachers. And, you know, we have meetings during the day at the high school. You know, the visitor parking is limited, so this is quite important to us. And I encourage all of you to visit our school website, concordps.org. We have all kinds of information on the school committee there. And easiest and quickest way would be to contact us, send us an email, either through the Concord Public Schools at concordps.org or the Regional Concord Carlisle School Committee at concordps.org. We'll respond quickly.
Thank you very much.
Any questions or?
Great. Go to the back row.
Hello, Carlin Reed, Chair of the PEG Access Advisory Committee. A couple updates for you today about Minuteman Media Network. We have recently interviewed, not we, but the town has interviewed a studio manager for the organization. I'm not sure if the hire has actually taken place, but we'll find out at today's meeting on the status of the hiring of the studio manager.
In about 40 minutes.
It'll be a little bit longer if necessary. We'll see what happens. Approximately 4.35 FTEs will be the full staff amount for the Minuteman Media. We received, I noticed that on our YouTube channel, where this is being broadcast, this is also being recorded, there are 215 subscribers now. And that started out as 0 as of October 1, so it's increased dramatically, which means people are watching us online, as well as watching it broadcast on channels 8, 9, and 99. The third update I have is we've received a copy of the budget for Minuteman Media with a report of the fiscal year 19 expenses and revenues, as well as fiscal year 20 expenses, revenues, projections, and a capital plan for the next 10 or 11 years. And I must say, it's a nice picture. So we feel like we'll be talking about it at today's meeting, but we've gotten quite a bit of information about how the program is going to be working, what the expected expenses are, And from the budgetary standpoint, we're feeling, at least I personally am feeling much more comfortable about it. So that's a very quick update on Minutemen. If there are any questions, I'll take them. Yes?
Carlin, what does it mean to be a subscriber?
Oh, you just click OK. There's no monetary piece involved. You just go onto the town's YouTube channel and say that you want to subscribe, like you would for any other YouTube channel.
And then how would my life change?
You become number 217. But I won't know it's you, Tom. So.
No, but I don't get automatic notifications, or I don't
You
have...
can. Through, if you are a regular YouTube subscriber, you can get little notices, little ding marks that says, oh, something new is up there. But I check the channel every day, and there's usually about one program posted every single day, something new. So that's worthwhile looking at. And if you like something, click the like button, and that records the number of likes for that particular program.
And so, just how does one access the channel? What?
The easiest way is on the town's homepage. Type in the search bar MMN, and that will take you to the YouTube channel. Also on the town's homepage, there's a, if you hover over the government link, there's a sub part that lights up that says government television. Click on that. That'll take you to the Minutemen website. Also on the town's homepage, on the left-hand side, scrolling down under communications, there's the words Minutemen Media Network. So there are several ways to link onto it for online. But again, it is still being broadcast over your regular TV channels on 8, 9, and 99.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Jean Goldsberry, Chair of the Concord Commission on Disabilities. We have been working on a couple of projects. We've been trying to provide some technical support, a little bit of technical support to some local businesses. And it's kind of come to our attention that we should probably try to do more outreach, particularly in the Main Street area as new businesses come in. Just that we're here and happy to help them in terms of accessibility for their businesses. We've had a few turnovers in the last year, and it's a struggle for a couple. And also, I had an opportunity to meet with the Concord, I think he's the manager of buildings, and talk with him about better accessibility at 55 Church Street. It is accessible, but it's, there was concern about whether it was safely accessible. So he's been working on that. We met with a person from the Acton Commission on Disabilities about a bike share program, an accessible bike share program that they are very interested in, and we're happy to partner with them. A number of communities in the area are going to be partnering with them on an accessible bike share program, which is very timely given that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is about to open in Concord as well. So we're excited about that project coming along.
And the accessibility in the Main Street, I know there was Cafe Nero and the nut bar, there was it was accessible but it wasn't clear.
Right. And there still is some need for signage about where the handicap entrance is. It's a shared handicap entrance for Cafe Nero and Graham, the new candy store.
The commission is allowed to receive the funds from the handicap parking, and that amount has been designated now. What's the status of?
I still don't have a clear delineation of exactly how much the funds are. It looks like it's a little bit more than $4,000, so we'll be able to use that toward our lockbox project, and potentially also for the bike share.
Just briefly, maybe tell about the lockbox.
Oh, sure. So the Council on Aging provides lockboxes to seniors who want one on their home. It's a little box about this size that is put on the front of the home. It's got a code in it and a key stored inside, so that if someone inside needs assistance, first responders can get that code and be able to enter the home. So we would like to be able to provide that also to people in Concord who have disabilities but aren't seniors.
I think one of the things the commission has done this year, which has been terrific, is getting a representative from the Council of Aging to attend the meetings, because there is an overlap in terms of services and
Yes.
needs, so.
Yeah,
that's
Albert
been great.
Alvarez has been attending our meetings, and he's been a really great liaison between COD and the commission.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have one of those lock boxes, and it's really good for people who forget their keys.
Sure.
We have, I guess we're all, Tom, do you want to know?
Yes, sure. Tom Tarpey, Chair of the Finance Committee. Well, this, as some of you know and have attended our recent hearing, we had a hearing last Monday night on the, actually a week ago, last Monday, and we're beginning, these hearings are on financially related articles for the upcoming town meeting. At the one on the 11th, we heard from the town manager about the town budget and from the chair of the Affordable Housing Funding Task Force Committee about their 4 articles. It is 4, isn't it?
Yes.
We, as several people have mentioned today, we have a hearing coming up next Monday, the 25th, at which we're going to hear from the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, and both school committees, and they'll be talking about the issues that Diana and Bob were talking about this morning, mostly concerned with, somewhat concerned with their middle school project, but also talking about their overall budgets. At our last hearing on the 11th, the town manager presented on the town's budget, and he did, among other things, say that we are, this year, if this budget is passed, we'll be adding approximately 10 full-time employees, which of course is very significant. In the Finance Committee's ongoing effort to produce a report on what the projected tax burden will be on the Concord taxpayers, something we do every year for 5 years into the future. We look at upcoming capital projects as well as existing obligations that the town has through collective bargaining agreements and otherwise. We were a bit concerned that there were a number of capital projects, the middle school being one of them, coming up, and the parties proposing those were all looking forward to having those projects well underway, if not completed, within the next 5 years. And as a result of that, we asked the finance director to prepare a debt study looking at what would be the impact on tax rates if these projects were all to happen within the next 5 years. And the result was fairly alarming, as one might expect. Using the very rough estimates that are available at this point, these 4 sets of projects would amount to about $155 million of debt being undertaken by the town, and would cause Concord, if this were to happen in this extremely unfortunate timing, to go from the town in the Commonwealth that has the lowest rate of debt per capita to the town in the Commonwealth which would have the highest rate of debt per capita in the Commonwealth. So that clearly is something we all want to avoid, and at a meeting just before that last public hearing on the 11th, the Finance Committee voted to write to the Select Board and request that the Select Board appoint a Capital Facilities Planning Committee which would be very similar to the committee that was appointed by the Select Board in January of 2002, when the town was confronted with a similar confluence of large capital projects. The purpose of that committee is to analyze all of those projects and determine what the priority should be and how they can be spaced out so that the finances of the town will be impacted in a prudent and bearable way. So I assume that the Select Board will be listening to that request and discussing it at one of their upcoming meetings. So that's where we sit right now. Thank you.
Any estimate of the impact on the, excuse me, on the average tax bill, real estate tax bill?
You don't want to.
I do want to know.
Well, first, in preface to the answer, I think we all realize that it's highly unlikely that these projects would be undertaken in that tight time span because it just isn't a prudent course of action. So the number that I'm about to utter is sort of a highly inflammatory but not real number.
I think it puts things in perspective.
It does put things in perspective. It would add $2,500 to the median tax bill.
Yeah, my concern, this is sort of also a concern about the way town government works, and that is that depending on how those are scheduled at town meeting, it's possible for each constituency that loves one of those proposals to have enough people at the meeting to pass all of them. That's my concern. Okay?
Well, that's the Finance Committee's concern also, and that's why we've asked that we have one sort of unrelated body, a disinterested committee, look at all of these projects and make a suggestion as to what's the prudent timing of them.
Well, I know there's not enough time to do it at this town meeting, but whatever the output of that group is, it might have been appropriate for that to have been an article at town meeting around the issue of how much is the town willing to take on in total, so that it would put some constraints on what could be done by the other articles.
I think we missed you.
Yeah, and one other in the back row, I think, after me.
Sorry.
David Carr. I'm chair of the Tax Fairness Committee since Friday.
Well, good timing then.
Yes, there's a meeting today. Okay, so we're actually looking. The thing we talked about most of the last meeting was the act we had put in has an expiration date of 3 years, and we're trying to figure out 3 years from exactly when does it expire, when do we have to start planning to renew it or continue it. And there's another thing that's come up on the from the Assessors Association, the MAOO. Anyway, they have something that's similar to what we have, except that it's less money and it's keyed off, I think, the circuit breaker, which would key it to the median house value in the state. So we had some discussion with Lane. We might be able to, maybe, if we can influence it to be a little bit more like ours, then we might actually be able to switch over to. So some question of whether we can renew ours and not go to this one or so forth. So it's a few questions about exactly how we go forward.
The senior tax exemption you're talking about?
Yes, okay. The senior tax exemption, exactly. Yeah, so they're proposing something that would be they're proposing a statewide thing. Any town could have it at local option. But it's capped at 2 times the circuit breaker benefit right now. Although the town could actually vote to cap, the select board could cap it lower, but they couldn't go higher than 2 times the circuit breaker value, which I think would have capped it at $2,200 last year. And I believe it's keyed off of circuit breaker eligibility, which again is so we are saying anyone, your home has to be less than the average price in Concord. The median price in Concord will be a little bit lower than that, and then a statewide median, I think, is lower than that still. So, there's a bunch of people who would be in that range of prices who would lose their benefit entirely if we had to switch over to that system. So, we're trying to figure out how to keep what we have, or at least to get something as good as we can. So there's some questions, and we'll probably
Lane
need
is
to,
clearly the one to speak to.
yeah, he's very much in tune with that. Although now the things in the general, has gone to the legislature, so he can't just talk to somebody and have them rewrite it. We're talking to Tammy Gouveia and to Mike Barrett, because they're the ones who would be able to put forth any changes that we would need, and we may. But we're a little bit unsure about how to parse the existing law about the expiration and what we need to do to renew it. So we may need some time from town council at some point to resolve those questions.
Very good, thank you. I think way in the back we missed. Again, I think you left for a while. I was waiting.
I was
for you.
sick, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I didn't think it would be appropriate to use the wastebasket. David Bell, Conservation Restriction Stewardship Committee. We're a subcommittee of the NRC. We just walk around on town parcels that have conservation restrictions, making sure everything's fine. We're in a quiet period of the year. That's it.
That's a lead-in for you.
Carmen Reese, Town Moderator. I have an update for you on our electronic voting demonstration. When I last spoke to you about it at the last meeting, the technology we were thinking about was an app-based system by VOATS, which was going to require us to download apps on phones or tablets, and would have had a tablet available roving, actually a bunch of tablets available roving at town meeting for people who didn't have or didn't want to download onto their smart devices the app. We had encountered a few problems with that. One was not having a robust enough Wi-Fi system within the high school to handle it, and we were going to have to create our own extra Wi-Fi system, which was going to be some cost and some pain in the neck for town staff. We also weren't able to negotiate down the price for this demo as low as we wanted, because since it's a test to see if we're interested, we didn't want to pay a lot of money for it. And we also heard lots of pushback on the notion of apps. And the time that it would take and the complexity that it would create for people who aren't familiar with them. So it all seemed perhaps a bridge too far. And in the meantime, we had one more meeting scheduled with another provider who has a clicker-based electronic system, and they are called Turning Technologies, and their system is in use by 11 Massachusetts town meetings, 8 of which are open town meetings. The reviews are excellent. People are very happy with those. It's a small little thing. You get a lanyard. You can hang it around your neck. It's secure. It operates on a radio frequency network that is on a little thumb drive that you stick in a laptop inside the auditorium. Has a limited range, so you can't leave the building and take your thing home and vote from. You can't do that because it won't work. And then each individual clicker has its own SKU code and number, so that if we wanted, that it's all anonymous, but if you wanted to audit your clicker to make sure that the vote you made was really the one that got recorded, it is actually possible to do that. And then the security on the other side is that the only vote counting that the system will take is those clickers that we have the numbers for, that we're distributing. So if I had one of these clickers from some other random conference and I wanted to just bring an extra one so I could have an extra vote at town meeting, it wouldn't work. So we're going to use those, and it's going to be free. So that is the good news, and that'll let us experience using clickers will experience the graphics on the screen. We'll have everyone will get one of those along with their paper ballot when they come in. If you don't want to participate, you don't have to, and we'll have a little area for people who have no clickers so that they can vote separately with their paper ballots when we're using the clickers. We'll have a couple of test votes. And then I met with the select board last night and we discussed how to put before the meeting the question of how we will use the clickers during the evening. And my proposal is that that I've asked the select board if they would make a motion to fix them in or voting to use the electronic clickers only for votes that require a standing count because they were too close to call by paper ballots, and only for votes that require 2/3 or more quantum of vote for passage. That is actually what the process is in Acton. And that kind of strikes a nice compromise between gaining the maximum efficiency that you can through use of a clicker, because it takes us 15 minutes to count a vote. So it'll way faster with clickers. And the 2/3 votes are the hardest ones to count. So using them in those two situations will give us a good boost on efficiency, but it preserves our transparent voting tradition in Concord, which I've also heard a lot of concern about from folks. So that's the plan. We'll see how we like it, and there'll be a pretty detailed questionnaire for people to give us feedback afterwards, and then based on that feedback, we'll decide what we're going to do. And the other thing I should say is that if we did decide we were going to go with this system, it would, so long as town staff felt like they could manage it without needing any staff from the company, and they'll know that after we've done this demonstration. And that is how the other 11 towns are doing it. They're all doing it in-house. It would cost us $8,000 for the whole of town meeting to have the clickers and use them for counted votes and so forth. And you figure by the time you count 3 votes, that could be the difference between 3 nights and 4 nights. And there's the potential of saving maybe $14,000 from having that 4th night. So that it would be a net gain if you spent the $8,000 and this year. Now there's no guarantee that you would have had 4 nights, no guarantee that you can avoid the 4 nights, but and the other hope is that if we're just a little more efficient and we do a better job using this time at town meeting, that more people will come. And that really is kind of the goal, to make it the best user-friendly experience that we can and really encourage people to participate. So but these decisions will get made by town meeting, and we'll see what we think. And down the road, we are not foreclosed from switching over to an app-based system. If in 5 years we're all so comfortable with apps we can't imagine life without an app, and we're ready to go there and think about the potential advantages that an app-based system would bring for us. So that's where we are. We're also going to be taking email questions and comments at town meeting this year, and I know folks here raised the excellent question last time about how could we really be sure that we didn't have a pretender amongst us, pretending to be a Concord citizen with it. I spoke with the moderator in North Andover about that. Like, what do you do about that? And he said, well, we get a phone number. If we're really worried, we might call them up, but it hasn't been a problem. So we'll have a little bit of trust, and I'm not expecting that we'll be flush with comments and questions from the email universe. And if we get overwhelmed, we'll just stop, because the priority is the people in the hall. Yeah.
A question. Last year, I think you reported that Acton did not have a very positive experience with this online voting. Is this a different system than Acton?
Yeah, this is a totally different system than what Acton uses. Acton uses an iClicker system, and they had a brain crash because it couldn't handle the number of people who were voting. This system, this company does huge, mostly what they do is giant conferences and educational, clickers in educational settings, and they do it around the country and worldwide. They have subsidiaries in Europe and the whole thing. And they never sought out town meetings. It was a couple, some town meetings that came to them and said, hey, can we use your stuff? And they said, sure. And then word of mouth has spread, and now more town meetings are using this. And they're still not marketing it, but we're happy to let us have a free trial of it. And so their system is developed in a different context, and appears to be a lot more reliable. Good question, though.
I think
Yes.
Acton used Wi-Fi, didn't they? I think that was
Maybe.
about the same problem.
Might have been Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Might have been Wi-Fi. Yes, yes. And some of the other problems with using Wi-Fi, Wayland uses Wi-Fi, and there's a big sign on the door when you come into their town meeting that asks you to disable the Wi-Fi on your smartphone. Because apparently it interferes, and it's a little more secure, I think, having the radio frequency loop within our building.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Remember the annual reports, if you could get those in, would be appreciated.